does the resolution that is proposed on Monday, for Monday, does that meet the requirements of, of satisfying that harm? And to me, the answer is no. Not entirely, and also I don't think it's meant to, according to the folks who are putting it forward. And so I think there's work to be done, and I'm committed to, if elected alderman of the 8th Ward and a member of that subcommittee, I am committed to ensuring that our reparations program, expanding it to increase the eligibility of folks, and ensure that we are providing a more holistic repair.
Thank you. Bobby, would you like to go next?
Yes, just want to start off by giving the clerk's office and Clerk Reed a shout out. So early on, before the discussion was even really a public one, Clerk Reed was tapped to work with Alderman Simmons to make a case for reparations. This is back when, at least one alderman was saying things like, we'll support it if you don't call it reparations, right? And Clerk Reed was tapped, and then I was asked by Clerk Reed to work with our interns in the office, as well as Dina Robinson and Shorefront, to make the first case. We drafted a memorandum that went on to be the first City of Evanston position paper on the case for local reparations here in Evanston. So I've been a part of this kind of conversation from the beginning, and feel I can continue to hopefully weigh in on this issue in a responsible and informed manner. But the need is, Clerk Reed talked about a few of the needs. I think another more targeted need is or harm is based around redlining. We understand that when African Americans first started to migrate and settle in Evanston, they settled all throughout Evanston. And then when the African American population began to rise through, racial restrictive covenants, through racial steering in real estate, through discriminatory and racially targeted zoning policy, the African American community was kind of forced into the 5th Ward. And then that area, right, that boundary was arbitrarily devalued. And so it was hard to get loans to purchase homes, and it was hard to get loans for free remodeling. And if you did get one, it was a predatory one with a high interest rate. And we know the assessed value of the homes in those areas weren't what they should be. And we understand that even still to this day, people in that area are not getting equitable delivery of public services. And so I think the injury, the harm has been well documented. And now we have rightfully moved towards repair. I still want to, they released the guidelines to the program, I think either today or yesterday. And so I'm still combing through it. But to the question of whether or not it, I can't remember the exact question, but I remember the essence. But, the reality is that we're not going to get full repair out of any program, right? I still to this day have not heard of any idea that will lead to the immediate full repair of the injured or harmed community. I don't think any one thing will lead to full repair. It's a step in the right direction, which I think is aligned with other reparations programs that we've seen. And I 100% have some concerns, and I've talked about some of those concerns on other programs and forums, and am looking forward to, in this leadership role as alderman, hopefully working on those issues, right? We want to make sure that people who prefer cash benefits can receive them. We want to make sure we have a commission of elected officials along with members of the injured and harmed community. We want to make sure we have a participatory budgeting process that allows for ideas to be vetted and to be voted on, so that people feel like that there's a clear way where they can get involved and stay engaged in the process. And we want to make sure we can fund it. We only are at this point being funded by one source. Again, there's some organizational individual support, but only one kind of consistent contribution, which is coming from the sales tax of cannabis from one dispensary. So we want to try to expand that.
Thank you. Katie Trippi, would you like to go next?
Hi, I'm a candidate for the 6th Ward in Evanston, and I actually made my final decision to get into this race because of the way that my current alderman voted on the initial reparations ordinance to use the marijuana tax to start this reparations fund. And he voted no at the time. I think he has since come around. I think this conversation has allowed many of us in the white community to understand more deeply and learn more and further our own personal journeys in understanding the harm and the repair that is needed for our Black community. And I so appreciate being involved in this conversation, and it honestly is the reason that I chose to get into this race. I have come across many other reasons to be wanting to be the alderman in the 6th Ward, and I'm excited for that, and I expect to be successful in April. One of the things that I am most proud of in being part of this community is the fact that we have engaged as the cutting edge community in this country in this aspect. And it is a tough conversation, but it is so important. And if it were an easy fix, it would have happened 100 years ago. But we have to take both the good and the hard decisions in putting this program together. Obviously, to me, it is a commitment of our entire community to address reparations. And I don't believe that this first attempt is the be all and end all, and I don't think it was designed to be. I heard a current alderman explain the other day that one of the criteria that they felt was most important was that it be basically judicially bulletproof, that it would not easily be contested in any court of law. And so that makes sense to me, at least as a starting point. But I honestly believe that the intent is for there to be an entire menu of possibilities for reparations and an entire menu of repair areas to be addressed, which includes education. It includes predatory lending. It includes environmental racism. There's such a broad spectrum of repairs to be made, and to be truly a reparation, the person who is being repaired has to feel that the compensation or the repair is correct for them. And I, as a white woman, cannot tell you what that correct reparation is. And I agree that there is not one single program or fund that is going to be able to repair all in one fell swoop. I'm happy that we have started this discussion. I'm happy that we are moving forward. I will lift up the voices of those who are making the decisions. I will lend my own expertise in fundraising to helping to expand that reparations fund. And I will support all of our efforts toward reparations.
Thank you. Darlene Cannon, would you like to go next?
Yes, I can. Can you please repeat the question also, please?
Yes, definitely. Why do you believe we need to take efforts to repair the damage done to our Black residents? And do you believe the proposed draft on March 22nd City Council agenda is enough to fulfill that repair?
Okay. I mean, I think I applaud the efforts that were made with the draft. I don't think it's reparations. When I think about reparations, I think about repair from harm that was caused. Black people endured 400 years of chattel slavery, Jim Crow, and that repair should come from the federal government. What happened here in Evanston was redlining, and the city participated with it. The realtors, the banks, all joined in. So yes, I think that we can, label this. I think someone said the first time home buyers program. This is more or less that program, and I just don't think that it should be labeled reparations. And so so the program too, because we're using white banks, the same white banks that were predatory towards Black people, with preventing us from getting loans from the get-go. Who's going to help us? The realtors? Are they going to be same sort of realtors who geared us only to the Fifth Ward? And we're using marijuana sales tax, but do we have any provisions in place to help Black folks be able to join in and be able to make money by owning our own dispensaries? Is there any thing in place? So like I said, I think it's a good start. To me, it's the first time home buyers program. And I think that there's no need to rush this. We can wait for the next council. If we want to get it right, I mean, because we have an affordability issue. So $25,000 is nice once I go through all the loopholes. But what can I buy with $25,000? I need to be able to have additional funds to be able to add to that. I mean, it's just not enough. So, I mean, like I said, again, I applaud what has been done, but I think that it can wait. I don't agree that it should be called reparations. I think it should be renamed, and we need to have the community, every person, our elders, people whose families have been here for generations. Their voices need to be heard, and they need to be on these committees and leading these discussions. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Nick, would you like to go next?
Sure. So first of all, to your first question about recognizing the need for repair, Devon's right that this program is not intended to solve the original sin of the nation so much it is to address what the city itself has done, but that doesn't mitigate any of the deep need to really put every best foot forward we can into this work, especially when repair's been offered to other communities before. This isn't something that's a national first time, period. It's a national first time for the Black community specifically. So not to mitigate the suffering of other communities, but it begs the question, why not this time? And to directly answer your question about the council vote on the 22nd rising to that challenge, no. All caps, all bold, underline, whatever you want, name it. No, that vote will not rise to that challenge. It will, in my view, it will do harm to that job, to that work. And I'm sure folks that go ahead with that vote are going to say, look at us, look at Progressive Evanston leading the charge, leading the way. Let's see how that ages. When you take reparations and offer 15 people some money for their mortgage, let's see how it sounds when you go running around saying that you just gave reparations to everybody. Let's see how that sits with folks nationally when that's the standard that we then are judged by. The word reparations is not a trophy. it's important work. And I frankly, I feel that we right now are on the verge of watching it become a housing program, which is not to say housing programs are bad or something like that. But to what a lot of folks are saying about this, don't call that reparations, call that a good work housing program. And there's no problem then with that program. And this commitment of, you know, $10 million, to me, we aspire to $10 million, but we only have one dispensary. We've committed $400,000. We would like to commit, allegedly, another 10 million. I'll, you know, when that money shows up, sure, we've committed to that. But right now, to say that we've made all of these promises and commitments, we've made a lot of rhetoric. That doesn't replace work, that doesn't replace results. And this notion that, you know, oh, housing is just step one, I know education was going to come next. I've heard folks push back and say, oh, are you just going to take a reparations lens to everything? And I'm running for office, I can't be a jerk about it, but, you know, it's like, well, what did you think the word systemic meant? Yeah, every single thing you look at is going to need to have this lens on it. You need to actually address the issue and not housing and education say we're done. I don't know that this issue was ever done, given the magnitude of the harm that needs to be repaired. And you know, it's to what Bobby was saying, you know, there's not one thing that's going to cause this full repair. That's the nature of a systemic issue. You're not going to have some silver bullet that knocks it right out. And that's why, frankly, in my campaign, I've talked about aligning public policy that's not necessarily under that umbrella of reparations, you know, like municipal broadband or home renovation and HVAC credits for upgrading to meet our climate needs. But somebody had mentioned participatory budgeting. That's a great step that will help. Even a voter initiative can help there if traditional mechanisms to get represented break down. My point being, every single thing we can do towards this work needs to be done with the same urgency as a housing program. We are in a very real danger right now of crowing about a housing program when we should have been doing good work for reparations. And I'll try not to take up too much more of your time. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Nick. I do want to call on Tom Sufferton. He's the incumbent in the 6th Ward, currently on the City Council. Tom, would you like me to ask the question again since you just joined?
Yeah, sure. And I apologize to everyone for being late. That's rude. And so please accept my apologies. And I apologize if you have to hear Sebastian give the question again, but I'm happy to answer it.
Definitely. Thank you for coming. So why do you believe we need to take efforts to repair the damage done to our Black residents? And do you believe that the proposed draft on March 22nd City Council agenda is enough to fulfill that repair?
Sure. So I have looked at the draft, but I have not read the memo closely. I saw it when it came out this afternoon. And I think looking here, I'm the only person on this screen that I see who has a vote on Monday. So I have a platform there that isn't available to others. So I'll listen and follow the conversation because that's one of the most important things someone in my position can do on this is listen. This is not about white people feeling good about what they're accomplishing. We need to listen, and that's something that I'm committed to doing. In terms of why we need to make the repair, it's quite obvious, what role Evanston has played in discriminatory practices. It's not the same as HR 40 level. It's tied to our own policies. I had a very good conversation with a colleague today about that because I think that's one of the deficiencies that's been pointed out by some of the people that I see on this screen about what we're going to do on Monday. And I think that is something that we should have a conversation about tonight, and it should be an ongoing conversation, is what exactly Evanston is doing. I understand and agree with some of the reasons why people say that this should not be labeled as reparations. I understand that, and I think that there's incredible validity to that. So in terms of what we're doing on Monday, I think it's a step in the right directions. I think calling it reparations or presenting it as anything more than a step forward in a much longer journey is false advertising. And I look forward to hearing what others have to say tonight. I'm here to listen. That's the role that I should play. You know, and I know people on this call who are educated know that I voted no. I'm going forward without a plan. And I think that some of the discussion that's come up in the last few weeks illustrates why I believe that was the correct vote, because there are a lot of these issues that have been raised that could have been addressed on the front end, and they were not. And now here we are on the verge of doing something that we should all be excited about. And there is a lot of consternation about whether or not it is what it was promised to be. So thank you for having me. I apologize for being late, and I'm looking forward to listening.
Thank you, Tom. And then last but not least, we have Mary Rosinski. If you'd like to answer, if you need me to repeat the question, let me know.
I may get off topic, but I think I remember the question. And starting with, do we need reparations? Yeah, I think that goes without question. I think I think we need more education for people who aren't affected by it, so that they understand that just because laws were passed back in the 50s and 60s and 70s, that didn't stop the consequences of the systematic racism. So based on that just alone, I mean, I don't think it should personally be a housing program the way it's set out. I would love to see a better plan that involves the understanding that the denial of housing and education and good jobs created the denial of generational wealth, which has helped so many more people, which is important to look at. So if we say just about we're going to give 16 people $25,000 towards housing, and I'm in the housing industry, I question whether or not that's good enough to start depleting the fund right off the bat. And but my feeling is that this is really such a critical issue that everyone who's impacted by it be at the table and be in consensus. It's going to be a tough discussion between the people who were impacted. And I don't know at this point if that list has been created. It may have been between the time I first looked at it and not. So without knowing who is a recipient of this and how they feel, I've heard so much divisiveness, and it feels sad, and it's harmful to the whole idea of reparations, because everyone in the country is looking at how we do it. And I would love us to get out of the gate, at least on our feet, without stumbling. We're going to have so many changes that are going to happen, but I'd love to see that fund built up more. And if someone is in that group that's going to be receiving reparations, it's up to them to decide, do I need it for school? Do I need it for housing? Do I need it to invest in something else so that I too can create generational wealth? Because one thing that we know in this city, in Evanston, that we have a huge wealth gap, and that it's $40,000 between white and non-white. So I would think that reparations should be addressing that also, and should be talking about that. I also agree with everything everyone else has said here, because I think there's been such great, thoughtful comments. And I know there's been good discussion in the reparations committee, but I'm not sure that that's where you stop the conversation and go public with a plan if the people who are impacted aren't at the table, you know, discussing like you've opened up this forum too. So I appreciate being able to talk, and thank you very much.
Thank you. I will now pass the torch on to,
I so apologize. I think the last part of the question is, do I think the draft is good to move forward? And my answer is, my gut level says no.
Thank you, Mary. So I will now pass the torch on to Malika, and she will be asking our candidates the next question.
Okay, so this next question, because we have more candidates on, so we're going to put a time on it. Let's say 60 seconds to respond, or 30 seconds. Jersey, what did we say, 30 seconds?
We should do 60 probably.
60, okay. 60 seconds to answer this question. So we've heard a lot of people say that this is a great start. I I, as Evanston Live TV, I've spoken to Black and white on the issue. And it's been interesting hearing from the white residents because some of them definitely do not agree that this should be called reparations and that they've done the numbers and the numbers just do not make sense. 15 people out of 12,000. Shall I repeat that? 15 people out of 12,000, and you call that a great start. Okay. So my question is, some of the white residents were very frank, very honest with me, and they said, you should just be happy with what you get because it's a great start. Just be happy with what you get. Very offensive, but hey, they're being honest. So my question is, which side are you on and why? Is this a great start and we should just be happy with what we get? Or should we fight for real reparations? Katie, I'll start with you. Katie Trippy.
There. Thank you for starting with me. I appreciate that. I am speechless over the thought that a white resident would say, be happy with what you get. It doesn't surprise me, but it does take my breath away. As I said in my earlier answer, reparations are only reparations if the person needing the repair or deserving the repair feels repaired. There has to be an entire array of ways in which we make whole our Black community. I have started a list. I am learning so much from this discussion, and I really enjoy being a part of it. Housing, policing, a neighborhood school, Black-owned businesses, especially a Black-owned dispensary or 2 or 3 or 10. Predatory lending, the environmental impact in our Black community of decisions that we have made in the past that we have to make whole. This is further than we were 5 years ago. We are clearly on a trajectory to go farther than this. We must push ourselves, and I really appreciate the ownership that is being taken and the leadership that is being shown on this issue.
So just to follow up, so
Sure.
Going forward, so starting with 15 people out of 12,000, you see that as
It's further
hopeful and optimistic.
I see it, and I go back to the whole can it be thrown out in a federal court or in a state court? It clearly, the way it is written right now, it clearly addresses a documented harm imposed on the Black residents of Evanston by laws enacted by the Evanston City Council back in the 1950s. And for that reason, it is a solid start. We can't afford to make a mistake in our first attempt, even though we are on perilous ground.
Do you think the first mistake was saying, Ann Rainey gave the figure 25,000?
Yeah.
Do you think that was the first mistake? 25,000 to 15 as a start?
It certainly doesn't sound like
trust from that point on that it's going to get better.
Right. It doesn't sound like enough, but it was a attainable goal. It was something that we knew at the time. We had first of all, we had no idea that the dispensaries were going to be held up by the state of Illinois in the way that they have been, the dispensary licenses. And I am entirely in favor of limiting the rest of the dispensaries that open in Evanston to being only minority owned. I think that is part of a discussion that the next council will have to have. Is $25,000 enough to do anything in terms of home repair?
Not necessarily is $25,000 enough, but why that figure? Why 400,000 coming out the gate? That was never explained. So everyone's like, oh, this is a great start. Well,
Yeah.
It sounds like it was a plan. Well, we'll just give them 400,000 and limit it to 15 people.
Right.
We're going to pre-select those 15 people out of all the people that might be eligible.
Right. My understanding is that 400,000 figure, it came out of what the proceeds of that fund is after the first year of the
Everyone
one
in
dispensary.
the reparations meeting was told that they couldn't know how much was in the funds.
Oh, that they didn't know what was in the fund right now and after a year?
We weren't allowed to know.
Why? Why is that?
Good question. So that's why I'm asking. You think it's an optimistic start, a great start, and that it's going to get better when it's already starting at we can't know all this information?
Yeah, that's not fair. That's
And
not
Randy
right.
said we weren't allowed to know. It was in violation.
Well, when I'm on the council, you'll be able to know. I will make that commitment.
Okay, well.
The reason that, Katie, I'm going to save you here. The reason that we can't know is because we only have one dispensary. And so it's the Department of Revenue that won't allow for tax information when there's only one of a type of business, because it allows competitors to back out their profitability. So until we have an additional dispensary, we won't publicly know what is in the fund. Whether or not you are on the council won't make a difference. It's getting another dispensary.
Well, just to chime in on that, Alderman Suffredin, because the dispensary also makes money from, medical cannabis sales that wouldn't be included in those figures, would that not potentially create an option for us to know, since you wouldn't be able to tell the entire of their profitability, you just maybe tell a section? It'd be like a Jewel if you know how much they make for orange juice.
Now, I don't know about the taxation of medical. I thought medical, it's definitely taxed at a lower rate, may not be taxed at all. I'm not an expert on that. I don't know. But I think for purposes of this discussion, or Malika, you're the moderator, but the numbers are $400,000 is the number we've all been using. Whether there's more in there or not doesn't really affect the conversation that we're going to have. But we've said 10 million and we don't have 10 million. And it's really a question of how fast we can get to 10 million. And a lot of that depends on how many dispensaries, some of the stuff at the state level, whether or not we identify other sources of revenue and commit those. But what's going to be talked about on Monday, and again, I apologize, I jumped the line, but it will be $400,000 for $16,000, $25,000 housing allocations. And those are about 3 months out, as I understand it, too. So anyway, apologize. Back to your programming. I'll just mute until I'm called on.
No, we need to hear that information. One of the big questions is why that number? Why 400? Why 400,000? Why 25,000? And why limit it to 15 people out of 12,000 as a starting point? That's a huge issue with a lot of Black residents, and white residents have asked. That's such a strange way to start something called reparations. But so let's move on to next candidate who would like to take that on. 60 seconds. Bobby Burns.
Yes, I want to start off with a few points. So one, anybody who everybody who feels they need to continue to advocate for what they feel is right should do so, 100%. If you do not feel this is reparations, and you're someone who is part of that injured or harmed community, and you decide not to apply, be 100% clear that you will not be forfeiting your future benefit in doing so. And I can commit to making sure that's the case. And I think the current council members would do that, as well as the candidates who are running. That would not forfeit your future benefits. So if you do not feel this is reparations, and you decide not to apply and not to take it, you would not be forfeiting your future benefit. Me and Malika have talked about this, feel like especially the mortgage assistance and home improvement benefit is reparations. I think from hearing different people, there's some differences of opinion of what reparations is. In my opinion, I don't know any other social equity program that will give you a home improvement grant because of past discrimination that you either experienced or one of your descendants, or you're the descendant of someone who experienced it. I don't know any other programs that provide money based on that criteria. And so I do, however, know social equity programs that base things on income eligibility, that base things on whether or not you live in a census tract where there's a lot of low and income moderate families, or I do know social equity programs based on those criteria. And so the last thing I'll say is that, again, in particular, the home improvement and mortgage assistance, to take home improvement as an example, it's so much so not a social equity program that you can combine it with one, right? So you can say, I want to receive a $25,000 reparations benefit from the city of Evanston and combine that with a CETA home improvement grant, for instance. And I think the way they're doing it now, and Suffredin, Alderman Suffredin, or Clerk Reed, correct me, but some people I think would prefer to get the home improvement grant directed, let's say, straight to a contractor, so it doesn't make them ineligible for to combine it with other benefits in the community. And I think that's also important. But as I said, I think we need to make sure that people that prefer a direct cash benefit, that they get it, and we need to make sure that we work on that. If you prefer a cash benefit, you should be able to receive it, and it should be the same amount that people will receive if they decide to apply for this particular program.
Thank you, Bobby. Carolyn Murray, 60 seconds.
Hi, Malika.
Hi.
Hi. Okay, so I just want to say that something historical happened. So it's a movement and it's just getting started. But I've lived in Evanston all my life, and I'm not surprised to hear the comments from the white residents to you, Malika. But I know that Evanston has a history of being a very proactive community. So I believe we can initiate something better than what is proposed right now. So I would love to see we pull all of our resources together to put together something in a form that will support all of the affected residents that this plan is targeting for. And I know that I only have 60 seconds, so I wanted to be respectful to the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn. Darlene Cannon.
Okay, yes, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question again, please?
You want
Sorry.
my long question?
Yeah, just short version.
Which side are you on and why, in terms of the Black residents should just take the bank loan, just take what's being offered and stop fighting for real reparations?
No, I don't think. I think that initially they said, people could either choose from, people could get cash. So I think whoever wants to get a check, then cut the check. That's how I feel about it. But when we talk about housing and limiting people to housing, let's talk about affordability in Evanston. Let's talk about gentrification in Evanston. A house in my ward sold for 166. They rehabbed it, and then well, first of all, they lowballed the longtime Evanston residents down from 188 to 166. They did renovations on it, and they sold it for 729. 729. So if I get my in order to buy that house, first of all, I got to qualify. But second of all, 5% down is $36,000 or something like that. So I would have to have money. So unless we're working hand in hand to address gentrification and the lack of affordability in this town, that you can give people $25,000 for a loan, but what can they buy? We can't build houses. I mean, there is no plan in place to talk about the elephant in the room, which is the fact that Black people are being displaced. And so, no.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Darlene. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Devon.
Sorry, I was in the chat trying to read through some of the statements there and something that was posted in an article. No, do I think people should be satisfied with the housing program as it's proposed? No. As we said earlier, I think it's important that folks should advocate for what they believe in, and I'm certainly someone who believes in in providing true reparations. And one of the things I think that this committee, I've said it before, I think one of the first things we have to do is, as a community, to define what we believe the word reparations means. So we have to have a communal definition of reparations. And once we have that communal definition of reparations, again, it's been mentioned before that we should have a participatory budgeting-like process for determining how we repair the harm. And so that's where I am. I don't think folks should be satisfied, and I think there's much work to be done to fully flesh out the program. I've been really, today I spent a lot of time today reading through the program, and there are a number, and I hope we'll get into it. I don't want to take up too much. I only got 60 seconds now, but I hope we'll get into some of the specifics of the program. And we see what's happening. I mean, it's on the agenda for Monday as a resolution, as opposed to an ordinance. And for those who understand parliamentary procedure, there may be a reason that it's on as a resolution as opposed to an ordinance. And I'd love to get into some of that and some of the particulars about the policy, so we know what's happening. It's going to pass, right? It's going to move forward. So I think what I want to spend time doing over the next few days is, one, how do we strengthen this as just a component of reparations? Understanding that, how do we make the best out of what's happening? We know this council. We've been here for the last 4 years. It's going to pass. Let's just do the best that we can right now. And I commit to, if elected, making sure that reparations is more than a piecemeal program, and really expanding whatever the work is that is, started now. I will commit to expanding that, but let's try to get the best out of, what we have. And we have about another month or two to wait until a new council.
Thank you, Clerk Reed. Mary Rosensky, 60 seconds.
If the answer to the question that you asked was, when a couple white people tell you that that's a good enough and you should take it, that's absolutely wrong. And it's not what should be happening here. And I think I keep going back to the fact that people who are saying that are feeling that the laws changed. And so you are in the same boat as, say, you know, someone who came through Ellis Island and had the opportunity to get a good paying job, well, a job. I mean, my relatives came and they didn't have good paying jobs to start with, but they had the opportunity to have a job and then the opportunity to buy something. And then from that, they could take the equity out and go to school. And from that, they could get a decent job. And from that, so that path, a lot of people who say things like that, Malika, I think they're not thinking what really happened beyond, you know, to an entire population of people that were brought to this country to do nothing but to be used to make money for the white people. And that's the conversation that when I talk about there needs to be education, that I feel needs to be talked about, because it's not a question of whether or not it should happen. That in many people in Evanston, they say we want, you know, to make this right, then let's make it right. And let's get the right people at the table and have those discussions. But it's not like me, or as Jonathan Newsman said before, it's not us who are going to make that decision of what feels like the right thing. But I think we have to make that money grow so that it can go to the people that deserve it, and they can figure out what they need the most. So that's how I feel about it. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mary. And Nick?
Sure, and thank you, Malika. Thank you again for helping this conversation forward. First off, I want to mention that I give credit to Bobby for saying something I think Carolyn said, which was that no one thing is going to fix everything. I want to just give credit where it's due. And sorry about that to Carolyn, but just to start off with what Mary had just said, she's being very gracious to this notion that somebody encounters you and says you should be happy with whatever you get, whatever that might be. Maybe on a different topic, I'd be right there with her. On this one, I'm kind of out of patience for that. And hopefully not too many folks have an experience like what you were talking about and don't have to deal with this kind of thing, but that's the language of an abuser. What that person is saying is, be happy that I'm not hurting you right now. Be happy that you're not worse off now that you've met me than you were before. Sit down and shut up and take whatever you get. And it's a nicer way of saying it, but the result's the same. They're still trying to cause that outcome. And so I just am done on this topic, especially with people putting a nicer sounding shine on it. They're telling you to take whatever they get because you don't deserve anything. That's what he means. And you know how to deal with it, but I wish nobody had to hear that anymore. It's 2021. I mean, like, you take your stereotypical, you know, deep red politician or voter or what have you, that's always about tax cuts, right? No tax cut is ever enough for that person. If you ever told that person, just take whatever you get and be happy, they wouldn't be. That's the same stereotypical sort of person that's going to be against reparations. And I think that's a double standard that shows itself very plainly, but I also think it's therefore beneath our serious consideration. That sort of person's not trying to tell you something constructive, which is a long-winded way of saying I'm really fed up with that kind of person, and I'm really sorry that they still exist in our community. I mean, of course they do, but to call it a great start is further along in that process. It's not actually describing and defining a housing program. It's trying to misrepresent it as something you ought to be happy with. You should be happy with the housing program. Housing programs are good social work. That's not what they're saying. They're saying this housing program is reparations, and that there is so much pushback just to change the name of something should tell everybody more or less all they need to know. What other, you know, there's this notion like, well, hey, this is targeting Black folk directly, and therefore it's special, and nothing really does that. And so what else would we call it? And this isn't the most fair thing in the world for me, so, you know, grain of salt, but I would recommend as a name a minority business incubator. Northwestern just offered one of those. It was exactly $400,000. Nobody called it reparations. Has a similar goal. So if that's not reparations, but a housing program is, somebody's not making sense. And like Devon just said, we know this council. I'd like to say it's from naivety, but I can't say that with certainty. So we know that, you know, to call it only a housing program, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to run a few seconds over time here, so I'll try to talk a bit quicker. What was originally sold to folks included a cash payment. It's not their fault that it's not there now, and it's not somehow bad on them for expecting it and not taking a housing program instead. Folks shouldn't have their own repair dictated to them, kept in secret. And I understand the reasons why it's secret, but you shouldn't be building a reparations program on something that is so nascent that we can't even learn what's in it. Don't build a reparations program on something like that. That's setting it up to fail. So no, it's not a great start. It's a decent housing program. And anything more than that is rhetoric. And I'll stop there. I'm probably over time. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. Thank you. And Jonathan.
Thanks, Malika. I would like to listen more than talk when it comes to this topic. So I'll keep my answer brief here. Should you take what's offered or fight for more? You should fight for more. What's offered goes nowhere near addressing the scope of the problem. Is it a good start? I guess the question is it a great start? And my answer is it's not even a good enough start. As I said before, my role as alderman would be to ensure the process is open and inclusive, and all the voices that need to be heard have the ability to be heard when making the decision or making the recommendation as to the details of implementation of the reparations program. And it's clear, based on the discussion that is happening right here and right now tonight, that process was not up to par. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you.
I believe that's all of the candidates for that round. I do want to make sure that, again, the most important part of this is the discussion with the audience, not just the questions that we're offering. So we are going to limit it just to those 2 questions. We'll open it up to the audience. I know that our scheduled end time is 8:30. We started about 10 minutes late. So if people feel the need to drop out, that's perfectly fine. But I want to make sure that we're not keeping you all here too long. So we're now going to open it up to the audience to ask any questions, make a statement. Just use the raise your hand function, and we'll try to keep those candidate answers to a minute, and definitely keep time and stop it when necessary. So if you're interested, please raise your hand, ask a question. Feel free to chime in.
Okay, we don't bite.
We have a question. We have a hand up from Miss Wright, I believe.
Yeah, looks like yes. Arlette Wright, would you like to ask a question? Jersey, you might have to unmute them.
Commentary is also okay, folks.
I would like to ask a question or make a statement.
Definitely. Make one.
Okay, I'm from Evanston. I'm a third generation Evanstonian, and I am out of town right now. And a young lady came to me and said she was from Evanston, Illinois, because she heard on the news that all of us are getting $25,000. And she's like, I wish I had a cousin there or whatever. She said, I've been talking about it for 2 or 3 weeks. And I told her, that is not a true statement. I don't know what news outlet you got that from, but I am not getting $25,000. I don't know anybody from Evanston that said my family is getting $25,000. So I just told her that's not true. So I just wanted to make that clear, that stuff is being put on the news and people are getting the impression that everybody is getting $25,000 in America. I mean, in Evanston. And that's not true. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Carla. Malika, you are muted right now.
Kevin Brown, you can talk.
Go ahead.
Malika, you're muted.
Oh, I was just saying thank you to Carla, and that I got messages from relatives from across the country that said, congratulations on you getting $25,000 in reparations. I saw it on Soul of a Nation and all the news programs. I was like, okay, who's next? Who has the next question?
I got a
Question or
statement.
comment? Question or comment? Thank you for that.
I have a comment that I think that I appreciate Evanston Rejects Racist Reparations for holding the forum. And I think it's unfortunate that we have a city council that is moving forward when there are so many questions about whether or not this is real or unreal reparations. And I think it indicates that it's so unlike what should be happening with government, where tax dollars are being used in a way where there isn't any defined plan. And I think that to say to people, trust us, we'll come up with a plan, but we're going to recklessly initiate a program for implementation without moving forward with a plan. It's totally irresponsible. It's bad public policy, and it's just bad government. And it's just so unfortunate that the train is on the tracks and we can't seem to derail it. That's the comment.
Thank you, Kevin. Francis, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Did you say Francis?
Yes.
Okay, that was quick. I just wanted to say I'm not a resident of Evanston. I worked in Evanston for many years. I'm not there now, but and I have a lot of friends there, and I was invited to the call. But I just wanted to say that I think just through our history, we see the same playbook over and over, where you have a Black person in a position of power who works along with white people who claim to have the best interests of Black people at heart. I'm sorry, I just got off work and I'm walking to my car. But it's the same thing over and over again. And it's just unfortunate that we have Black people who are part of this, because that is always the attempt to legitimize what's going on. And that has been one of our biggest problems. People who look like us are supposed to work in our best interest, and white people who are liberals, you know, when I go to Evanston, you know, I see over and over Black Lives Matter, but when it comes to talking about a redistribution of the wealth, there's always a different conversation. You know, it's never really what's really wanted. You know, it's always something that's sentimental or emotional, nothing tangible that would really level the playing field. So that's my comment.
Thank you, Francis. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis.
Divine P.
Hey, Malika, how you doing?
All right, how are you?
I'm good, I'm good. Just so full disclosure, I'm not a resident of Evanston. I am a reparations advocate and activist here in Brooklyn, New York. I got a chance to meet these two brothers, Sebastian and Jersey, on Clubhouse in a reparations room. We were just talking about what's going on nationally and what was going on in this area. And I had some concerns with the Evanston bill as soon as it was promoted as reparations. And it was just a blessing to hear these two brothers in the room saying, yeah, we feel the same exact way. I think a couple of the candidates, I know Darlene, I think Nicholas, they kind of highlighted some of the things that I was feeling. And it's this concept of of reparations being whatever they say it is. And by they, meaning it gets defined by the power structure. And so since we know that they haven't done it at this point, and they didn't do it when they could have done it, and they reneged on the promise of the 40 acres and the mule, we understand that at every point when we have an opportunity for it, they're going to define it as something that isn't adequate or isn't enough or isn't sufficient. And so I'm glad there was a couple of people in the room that said, you got to continue to advocate for what's right. But with that being said, I also understand the concept of a lot of the white residents that are like, hey, just take what you can get. Because as Black Americans, and by that I mean the descendants of those ancestors that survived the American Holocaust known as the institution of slavery, we have always had to deal with and choose the lesser of two evils. And so the concept of just take what you can get is exactly what Black politics has been since emancipation. And so we're kind of stuck in this position where, we know it's not true reparations, and we want to get to the point where we can present something that is real reparations. And for real reparations, that means just addressing all of the systemic racism and marginalization that has been done to our demographic. But we also know that we're bound by the racist electorate of the day. And so there's that in-between ground that we always have to walk, whereas if we shoot this down, will we honestly and genuinely get another chance? And so that's the question that we always have to ask ourselves, unfortunately, that almost every other demographic doesn't have to ask themselves. Like, even when you look at the bill that just passed, they called it reparations for Black farmers. But then you look deep into it, it's for underprivileged or minorities. It's nothing that's ever just for us. So it's always billed as just for us and to repair what they did wrong to us systemically. But then you look at it, it's always for everybody else. And so that's just my initial thoughts. I don't have all the answers for it, but I do appreciate the fact that people have advocated for us to continue to fight, because I know that's what we always done, and that's what we always gonna do until we can get it right.
Thank you, Devon. Devon, I think I saw your hand up first. Would you like to say a piece, and then we'll have Khalif afterwards?
Yeah, we'll let Khalif go, and then I just want to talk about some specifics of the program, because I think that'd be a good use of time if we can have a discussion about what's on the table for Monday, and let's think about what either we can do to whatever it is that we want to accomplish. Let's walk out of here with some marching orders to actually accomplish something. It's nice to talk to each other, but I think what I'm hearing is we're all on the same page. We get it for the most part, right? So let's figure out how we can take that common understanding that we have and actually turn that into something useful, an action that can lead to making this policy stronger and better, and let's be constructive. But Khalif, go ahead, sir.
Hey, how you doing? This was an amazing event. Sebastian, I'm glad you invited me out. This is, I'm glad, to be here and, witness this. This is a moment in history that, a lot of Black folk are, they may not understand, quite frankly, what's fully going on. I've had friends of mine who reached out to me and, they said, this is reparations. And I apologize. Let me introduce myself. My name is Khalif Alexander. I'm a reparationist from Philadelphia. I am, somebody that's just been following this stuff for a while. And, I met Sebastian on the last call. I think it was about a few weeks ago. And I also heard, Miss Rose and a few other people. And, they spoke a word that, when I heard, I said, I have to, reach out to these people, because I fully believe in, what's going on out there. And I think that, I've told them multiple times, I think Evanston is ground zero for, what's going on and what we need to do as reparations in this country. Now, as far as, reparations, the bill, just calling it reparations is just so watered down. So, now it's like a play off of words at this point. And it now makes it where as though anybody can just start calling anything reparations. And, they have, you're talking about a housing program. The housing program, I mean, I guess that's cool, but that's not repairing anything, quite frankly, even the dates that you all have. I mean, the population of Evanston, of the Black folk that live there, is very minuscule. So, I'm just looking at a scenario where as though, why not make it where as though residents of Evanston can be able to have housing and a free education at a Chicago State University, access to farming programs, because Black folk have been locked out of farming, and they've just monopolized us with this socially disadvantaged bill that was passed in the COVID relief bill, or the American Rescue Plan, whatever you want to call it. And, it's just one of those type of things where as though time and time again, we always see these, red flags and these finesses, as I like to call them, how they do us. And, we can't play around anymore. Like, it's 2021, our livelihood is on the line, to be quite honest. Our family members, us as individuals, we see that our societies and our communities are really, they're in shambles, and we actually need something for the betterment and advancement of our people. I love my people so much that I'm getting on calls. I'm trying to do anything that I possibly can, because I have to help my people. That's my life mission, but we have to, organize and come together. So I'm always going to say this, Evanston, that's ground zero for this reparation and stuff. And I think, everybody from wherever you may be, I think we need to go out there and help these people, because, I think we need to go out there. I really think so, at some time, once it gets nice out, because they have to see us to understand what we're doing. They have to understand, that this is real. The media is putting out false propaganda. You have everybody in the country thinking this is reparations, and all they see is the headline. So yeah, so we just, we want to come out there and help, and anything that I can do, please reach out to me. I'm a trooper. I get on the ground and I'll help out, and I can do anything. But if you all can, on next week, I'll be hosting a room on Clubhouse about the free HBCU plan, how we're basically saying that the Black farmers, they were robbed in this new American Rescue Plan. And, socially disadvantaged farmers, Black farmers only make 25% of them up. We want to create more. We think that Chicago can be a place. Evanston, Illinois, but Illinois in general, we think that can be a location whereas though we can potentially get more farmers, but that it could also be a part of this pseudo reparations that you call, and maybe add some cash incentive if you want to call it a real reparation. So that's just my thoughts, and thank you for having me. I'll be on any cause that you all have.
Thank you, Khalif. I know that Jess wanted to ask a question or make a statement, so I'll let them speak. And then I do want to, as Devon mentioned, touch base on the inner workings of the bill, and then what are the next steps that we can do as individuals to make sure that our voices are heard. So just feel free to ask away.
Thanks. It was pretty much that, like, so what are the next steps? Because as Devon mentioned and other folks are naming, it seems, we're all on a very similar page of this isn't reparations, this isn't it. It's breadcrumbs, like it's gonna set a precedent that can cause a lot of harm. And so the question I put in the chat earlier that sounds really like unrealistic to me is like, we should get these alder people to not even vote on it, considering so many of them already are voted out. So like, is that something feasible? Like, yeah, what's a concrete next step so that this doesn't become a horrific precedent? And yeah, I guess my other question is, and I don't know that it's actually important to be answered right now, is I don't understand what the resolution means. I'm not this political whatever that some of you all are. So if it's just a resolution and not an ordinance, why are we even voting on it? Maybe Tom can answer that, because I know that's why he voted no last time, because it wasn't even anything that stuck to anything and had a lot of holes in it. So yeah, just looking forward to next steps. I'm gonna stop rambling. Thank you.
Tom, Devon, if you want to chime in, I know you two are the ones that are really in the inner workings of Evanston right now, so feel free.
Yeah, well, I'll let Tom, if you want to go about, why you voted no, or, difference between ordinance or resolution, or if not, I'll feel free to answer that.
Sure, yeah, so, in terms of process, I think realistically this will pass on Monday. If I, had my preference, we wouldn't have dropped it on Thursday for a Monday vote. But that's what it is. So, Devon, if you want to talk about the difference between a special order of business and a resolution and an ordinance and all that, I know that's your area of expertise and strength. But it's on the agenda for Monday as special order of business 3. I would assume it gets moved to the top because it doesn't seem reasonable to have people sit through the other 2 special orders of business. This is clearly the headliner. So Devon, if you want to talk about the actual process, I think realistically it's going to pass on Monday. I mean, that's what everyone's expectation should be.
Yeah, and I think that's just about right, depending on what folks who have ability to do. So the difference between what we know is the way legislative actions of a municipal body are weighted, or resolutions are at the bottom of the rung, an ordinance is right in the middle, and then of course a referendum that's voted on by the people would be at the top and weighted the most, given the most weight. Resolutions are typically done for short-term items or to express the will of the council. So and part of the importance between a difference between a resolution and an ordinance is the public process that happens with those different pieces of legislation. Again, there's a reason that they receive different weight. A resolution can be introduced and passed at the same introduced and passed at the meeting, for its first reading. At the meeting that it's introduced at, it can be passed at. An ordinance, has to be introduced at one meeting and then passed at another meeting, unless there's a suspension of the rules, which requires a unanimous vote of the council, right? So that's, even one member could stop, the passing of an ordinance at the same meeting that it's introduced. And then of course, a resolution allows for the most, a referendum, of course, allows for the most public participation because it goes to a vote of the public and thereby is given, the most weight. There's a huge period. So, it's about how much time the public has to interact with each of these pieces of, council legislative actions, and then, the weight that they're given. So what we've seen here is the legislative history of this is that the first reparations action of the council was this resolution 126R19, which said that we are going to put our cannabis tax revenue toward a local reparations fund. Well, this was a resolution, so it doesn't hold that much weight. And then also within that resolution, there's nowhere in the resolution that says to what dollar amount. It doesn't say $10 million is what we're gonna hold the council to raising here. It doesn't say how much per year we want to put into the fund. There's a lot of missing stuff in this resolution, which I think should have been an ordinance. Then the next piece of legislation to move this forward was an ordinance passed in 2020, 102020, which created and codified into law the reparations subcommittee or the reparations committee. And there it just said the committee is comprised of the 5th Ward Alderman, 2nd Ward Alderman, and 8th Ward Alderman, and then 4 at-large members. And the 4 at-large members aren't really defined as, it could be 4, 65-year-old white guys that live on the lakefront. There isn't really a definition of what those at-large members look like. And they could, don't necessarily have to look like the armed committee or community, I should say. And then finally, we're here at the resolution that is before the council on, that will be before the council on the 22nd. And, there are a number of, things that I find, particularly, one, there's the whole question about, is this reparations or not? But if you put that aside, and you just look at it as a piece of policy and a piece of legislation, there are issues that are within, and, if anyone wants to get into some of that and maybe think, how can we improve this, or how can we stop this? If the question is, how can we slow this down? With parliamentary procedure, the options are to make a motion to hold. So this could be held, if 2 aldermen make a motion to hold, it can be held according to our rules. And that would be held to the next regular meeting, which would be April 12th, which is after the election. That's about the only way to slow it down and have more time for conversation with this.
Thank you, Devon, for that. And I implore everyone who does find a problem with this program and feels that it's unfit to continue. I know that we'll be spending the next couple days getting in touch with council members that are going to be voting on Monday, as well as joining in public comment on Monday as well to voice frustration that we have with the bill. I've spent a good amount of time talking about this issue, whether it's in interviews and individual forums, talking to individual residents, and just so they can understand and get a good sense of what's going on. It's important that everybody's voices are heard, and that we recognize that the procedure that has taken place so far has not been very democratic, in the sense that there hasn't been a ton of community involvement, community participation. Reparations meetings are at 9 a.m. on a Thursday, when the average median Black household income is $44,000. And if you're making $44,000 a year, you're not able to go to a reparations meeting at 9 a.m. on a Thursday. You have work, you have a family to take care of. So I implore everyone to either shoot council members an email or join in city council for public comment in the beginning. I don't want to take up too much of everybody's time. I know Erlette has their hand up, so if they want to unmute and ask a question, make a statement, feel free. Erlette, would you like to chime in? You have your hand raised.
I may be having difficulty. Sorry about that.
Unmute me?
Okay.
Did you
There you
unmute me? Can you hear me now?
Yep, we hear you good.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm sorry about that. I had a problem with getting my mic to work. But what I wanted to say is this. I'm a longtime Evanstonian. I was born and raised here. My mother was born in 1922 over on East Railroad. I was kind of disappointed. I was embarrassed. I was dumbfounded when we got on TV and started talking about reparations, which we hadn't voted on yet. It made it sound like to the people who live someplace else that we have already done it, which in fact we hadn't. Like others, I had people asking me, well, when am I going to get my money? I said, there is no money to be had. The problem I have with this whole thing is this. It seems like the government, federal government, local government seem to be going out the same hymn book. They do what they want to do, regardless of what the people want them to do. If in fact, I don't know how we can do it, but there has to be a way that we can stop them from making this, from voting on this on Monday. There are too many people. I don't believe it's reparations, okay? It's the farmers, Black farmers that are getting the money, they want to tag it as reparations. And the Black farmers are having a problem with it being called reparations, okay? Reparations, this is not reparations. Words have power, words mean things, and we have to be careful of how we use words. We teach children in school, use your words appropriately, find out what they mean, use them as such. And then we're gonna change the meaning of the word reparations to fit what we want it to be. And I don't know who's gonna benefit if we vote on Monday. Someone's benefiting because the people sure aren't. And I have a problem with that. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your words.
Unless there's someone else, I do want to chime in very quickly, which is, like I said, the way to slow this down is to have 2 aldermen motion to hold it. But then short of that, if we don't have 2 votes to hold it, and that's only to stop it until the 12th. So this council, if they so choose, will have every opportunity. There's a number of regularly scheduled meetings before the new council takes office. So there's really no way to stop this until the new council takes office. And so I think, short of holding it for a few weeks, which I think is responsible, there's some things that we really need to look at here to expand this policy. And one in particular that, I'm looking at, because again, we have to make the best sausage we can with what is going to happen, and we can at least encourage the council members to pass something, if they're dead set on passing it, and knowing what this council has done time and time again. We have to live in the real world. I think, demanding some changes to this policy to make it better, so it leaves a better product for the next council to be able to expand and work on is what's productive. And, one of the things that stands out to me is, there's a number of things, but one in particular is, yes, we're already limiting the money to mortgage payments and to the home improvement and all that stuff. I don't think that's a great way to start, but working from that framework, we're also limiting, if 5 of the recipients or 10 of the recipients wanted to get together and buy a 30-unit, building, and turn that building into affordable housing for more Black Evanstonians, this policy, as it's written, would prohibit them from doing that. Because it only limits, up to $50,000 for any single property. And so, folks can get together and buy a larger affordable development for Black Evanstonians. So, those are things that, that we need to really look at this policy and what can we do to make it better? To me, that's one. We have this weird definition, and again, it gets into the weeds, but that's what folks elect us for. And that's what we're here for. The policy, uses the term ancestors. It seems like a minor thing, but it's not the common definition of ancestors. And so why not just use the terminology eligible persons? Which ancestors could potentially, if someone took it to court, because we're not using the common definition, someone could file a suit, saying that, people who receive the money aren't technically ancestors, which the common definition is one person remote from a grandparent. So this is like great grandparents. So there could be, something along those lines that could, taint the legislative intent by not using clear language. I'd love to hear some of the other candidates and folks, who've read this, offer, after having read it, offer concrete, steps that we can take to improve it, expand it. Or if we have Alderman Sufford in here, and we don't have Alderman Fleming, maybe if they're willing to commit to what they're going to do on Monday, that would be helpful as well.
Look, I don't think that procedural trick's going to change anything. That's the issue. I mean, like I said, I think the most prudent thing to do would have been to put this out well ahead of today for a vote. But I mean, let's play this out. Unless there's an actual tangible change that people want, the reality is it will have enough votes to pass whenever it's voted on by this council, right? So like, and I'm asking this question not as a hypothetical, but to the people in this room, like what changes would you want to see if there was a delay? And realistically, do you think that the members of this council would vote for them? And I just don't think that's true. So,
Tom?
Yes, Kevin.
Is it true that if you live outside of the state of Illinois and you have a claim in Evanston that you would not be eligible? Is that true?
I'd have to look at
I can answer. Yeah, I spent a whole lot of time, too much time today, reading through the policy. And the way it's written, yes, as long as your plan is to purchase a house in Evanston.
So you're saying that if you plan to purchase a house in Evanston and you live outside of Evanston, you're still eligible?
Yes,
Okay.
Under the program guidelines as they're put forth.
Yeah, I raise that question because I think it is a potential defect in the legislation, that I think that if the city of Evanston has made an admission that it has caused injury or tort to somebody, and that person, is owed a benefit, I don't think that the city can limit the redress on the harm that they have admitted to. So if I live in Atlanta and I don't want to buy a house in Evanston, and you've admitted that you injured me or my family, and you're saying that I'm eligible, I think that's a potential legal problem for the city. And I think that would be one of the reasons to hold the vote.
Thank you, Kevin. I saw that Justin Cooper had their hand up, so if they want to chime in really quickly and statement, question, anything, feel free.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it's coming to a vote. It's coming up Monday. I just feel like if they just changed it and not call it reparations, I feel like it would not make people happy, but it would be calling it what it's not. It's a housing program. At the end of the day, it's a housing program. At the end of the day, 10 million over 10 years, that's $1 million per year, only helping totally over the 10 years, 400 people max. That's not reparations. Even just the fact that you're getting some of this money out of the cannabis tax in Evanston is just assuming that Black people don't buy weed from the dispensary. And therefore, I feel like as a Black man in Evanston, born and raised since 1980, that me paying into my own reparations is kind of backwards. But I mean, and at the end of the day, this is just setting a low bar for the word or just what reparations should be for this country. And I feel like since we already heard some Republican senators call what they just passed in the whatever the act they just passed, and saying that they're giving Black farmers money is reparations, which is not. None of this is reparations. It's a housing program, and so let's just call it what it is.
Thank you. Divine, do you want to make a statement, comment?
Yeah. There's I agree. I mean, we can do the math really quick on $10 million. $25,000 per person. That's again, that's only a few hundred people. So I mean, we really have to expand that. And also, again, there's nowhere that I'm seeing in any document that has been approved by the council that specifically says $1 million a year and $10 million. It's not in the resolution, the 2019 resolution. It's not it's not a part of, well, it is a part of the new resolution, but it's harkening back to a resolution that doesn't specify it. And so I agree. I think that the big problem is that this is the program coming out of the gate. Because I'd love to hear what I'm hearing from folks is the definition of reparations. And what I'm almost feeling like I'm hearing is that folks feel like the city of Evanston should not do reparations, in and of itself. And that if we do commit to some reparations, it almost has to be in conjunction with the various levels of government, because there is no way that our city in and of itself with a $300 million annual budget could provide any kind of substantial redress to the 10 to 12,000 Evanston Black Evanston residents who are do redress for the harm that the city has caused, unless again we partner with the other levels of government. And so, I want to hear from folks, is that, if elected, and I'm one of the folks on this subcommittee leading this and on the council leading this, is that what folks are in essence asking for, that we wait until we can work with the other levels? If not, if that's not the ask, then there is somewhere we have to concede that we're not going to be able to provide full redress in one fell swoop for everyone. And we also have to concede that no matter how we fund reparations, I'm going to be paying into it, and other, Black folks are going to be paying into it, because where does our money come from? It comes from the people who live here. There could be a way that we create a special taxing district that only affects, and I'm supportive of this, that thought of it, that only affects, the single family areas that have, the 6th, 7th ward, and they pay a special tax to fund reparations. Maybe, I don't know if Tom or the other, whoever the 7th ward or 6th ward alderman is next term would be supportive of creating those districts that tax their residents at a different rate. But, short of that, we're going to be paying into it in some way. And we also, I think, have to accept, again, short of some kind of UBI model where we're making some kind of monthly or annual payment, that there's just not a realistic way for us to repair all 10,000 residents at once at an amount that is sufficient to the harm that was caused.
Thank you, Devon. I do want Divine to have an opportunity to talk, because I know his hand was up, and then Friday as well. And then Mary, I know I can see your hand. So I want to get to you three. And then I do want to say, we can continue this conversation on our Facebook page. Even send us an email, send us with any questions, concerns, and then we can send these out to all of the candidates. Tom is here as well, and some of the other council members as well. I don't want to keep you all too long, so let's knock out these last three, and then we'll close it out from there.
All right, thanks, Sebastian. So real quick, I'm glad Devon got a chance to say what he said, because he made the case for exactly why this shouldn't be called reparations and why it's not reparations. So when he says, yeah, there's no way for us to fix all the 10,000 residents, exactly. That's what reparations would do. And so since it doesn't do that, then let's not call it reparations. It could be the redlining correction policy. It could be the housing program. It could be, let's help you get a house, whatever you want to call it. But the minute you call it reparations, and on top of that, one of the organizations that's tied to this bill through, I think she's an Alderman Simmons, is in Cobra and NARC. And so when they put out an article saying that, yeah, this reparations bill in Evanston can be the model for the national reparations initiative and policies, that's a problem. And that's why you can't call it reparations. So there's no, I don't think, let me speak for myself, because I don't want to speak for anybody else. I'm on this call. I'm not a resident of Evanston, but I have no problem with Evanston doing reparations. But what I'm not going to do is sit back and accept some piecemeal BS pseudo reparations that ain't reparations. And so unless we're going to do it right, and unless we're going to do it real, then we're not going to do it at all. So we can do this housing program, but even the housing program ain't done right, because if you're given $25,000, we've already said that it can't buy anything in Evanston, right? Or anywhere else for that matter, definitely nothing here in New York. But if there's no policy attached to that, that says we're going to fight against the predatory lending, we're going to make sure that the same banks that did this to you in the first place aren't the ones that you go and get those loans and are help you subsidize and help you with the mortgages on these homes, and or there's no policy to ensure that these homes in these Black neighborhoods, because what also redlining and what also systemic oppression did to our communities, where it made us a contagion to wealth. And so even when we get these homes, they don't accrue the same value, the same equity as white homes. Not because we don't take care of them, not because we don't maintain our lawns, but because we Black. And specifically not just Black, but the descendants of those ancestors that survived slavery. And so until we start talking about that and doing that in conjunction with giving us some $25,000 piecemeal, we can't call it reparations, because the minute we call it reparations, it's going to get co-opted like it's being co-opted now and being pushed as the model for national reparations. That's the problem. So I don't think anybody on this call has a problem with a real reparations program that Evanston or anybody else wants to do. But if it's not going to fix every one of those descendants of the slaves, then we can't call it reparations, because that's what reparations does. So let's not get caught up on this. Well, can we define reparations? We don't know what reparations is. Guess what? Reparations was designed to right the wrongs of slavery, so and everything else that followed. So if we're not doing that, then we can't call it reparations. And that's just my 2 cents from Brooklyn.
Thank you, Divine. Friday, and then Mary Rosinski.
Oh, I love me some Divine. Well said, well said. Anyway, I am also like Divine, my Brooklyn brother. I am not a resident, and I don't want my messaging, if you will, to really supersede anything that the residents would self-advocate for. But I will kind of just add a little bit to what Divine just said, in that it's very important. And I've been putting information into the chat, and I really hope that the folks that are there in a service capacity, who are current seat holders, will pick up some of those things. I dropped the link from Here to Equality, written by Sandy Darity and Kirsten Mullen. If you are literally trying to draft reparations legislation and you don't have a functioning definition of what reparations is, that is in of itself a problem. The Minneapolis Mapping Prejudice Project, that's a project that I really love. A woman, her parents were from Scandinavia somewhere. They moved to Minneapolis in the 50s. Like many places, there was redlining, there were covenants on homes and who could and could not buy. And essentially her immigrant grandparents were able to come into this all-white community because of the covenants that existed. And then you fast forward and you look at the wealth disparity just based on fair market value in housing, it's significantly different. And so she, in sort of coming to the understanding of like what racism really was and how it intergenerationally, for multiple generations affected the wealth, she started mapping all the places and houses that had the covenants and looking at the wealth disparity. If Evanston participated in that, to me, that's a place where you start. And then like Divine said, then you do some sort of partnerships with some of these banks, lenders, Fannie Mae, somebody, maybe a higher level of government, maybe hard money, private lenders, whatever. And you create some sort of financing package that follows the red line harm, where you're trying to reestablish fair market value to the communities that are undervalued based on race. If someone can go buy a property for 100 and some odd thousand and flip it for 700,000, that lets you know that there's $600,000 of wealth that's just sitting there. And that has not been tapped. And if Evanston was part of its governmental and municipal role, was responsible for that difference in valuation, then you quantify, and then you start talking about, okay, what do we as city government, what do we provide? What do we do? Okay, for these residents, what can we do? How much money do we have? And if cannabis is the only source, how do we maximize that? And are there other resources that we can pull into this? And you also say, well, whatever our repair policy is going to be, we're going to subordinate that to what any federal policy might be, because why? We want people to get a federal government reparations benefit. And so I just, again, I think, Devon, the alderman, I think you are, I don't think you just get off the hook by saying, no, well, we just can't do it, because that's also convenient. That's a matter of convenience. And it shouldn't be that convenient. There is a responsibility for the city to do its repair, but the city cannot be politically lazy. It cannot be just, we're going to just throw something at the wall and see what sticks. That's not how you legislate, and that's not how you build good policy, and that's certainly not how you do repair. The Japanese repair that was done here was done with time and care and assessment. The Holocaust victims that wound up getting settlements from Germany and then from the trains that transported and all of these things, it was done through time and care and effort. You can't just throw something up in the sky and say, oh my God, Hopefully it'll stay up there. That's not how this works. You gotta do the work. That's all. I'm done speaking. Nice seeing you folks. Thank you so much.
Can I just chime
Thank
in
you,
and
Friday.
can I chime in response to that?
Yes, please do, Devon, and then we'll
yeah.
grab Mary.
Yeah, I just want to respond. I agree. I think we have to have a holistic response to this. And what I've been talking about is using a participatory process to design the program where the harmed community here in Evanston, right? What New York City, what Attleboro, Massachusetts, what Miami, Florida, what other cities around the nation did to perpetrate harm as individual cities to their Black population is different than the harm that Evanston perpetrated against this. We have a unique history of harm. And I think what our reparations program has to address the harm that this city caused against its Black residents. And I think our Black residents, unlike the Japanese reparations and unlike any reparations before it, the folks who were harmed should be in the driver's seat, determining their own repair. And there is no way, I think if you talk to the survivors of the Japanese internment camps, to the survivors of the Holocaust, whatever reparations they received was nowhere near repairing the actual harm that was caused to them, because it's impossible. How do you repair the harm of having your family murdered during the Holocaust? Or how do you repair the harm of being in internment camps? And how do you repair the harm of generations of systemic racism and harm? There's no way. And so I think the city of Evanston has to do what it can, the best we can, for the harm that we cause. And I agree, maybe we shouldn't. In fact, this program, I'm not an alderman now, I'm the city clerk. I'm supportive of repairing the harm that was caused to Black folks in the community. We did a lot of the initial research on some of this, particularly around housing. I think the council incorrectly got stuck on thinking that the repair had to involve housing itself, just because the repair was stemmed from housing harm. But I think that the residents of Evanston, the Black residents of Evanston, have to define what a local repair looks like, and it's different than the repair that Brooklyn, Chicago, other places would cause.
Thank you, Devon. Let's do Mary, and then we will wrap it up and call it a night.
Well, this has been an absolutely fabulous discussion, and I wish Devon would come and speak at City Council on Monday. I go back to the point that I still am so bothered that we're moving forward with anything without identifying who's included in it. That's to me is a huge problem. Someone else had brought up the fact that it just seems wrong that people who are buying cannabis might be taxed on it if they're a recipient of it, but that seems like an easy enough fix. If you just take, when they want to buy something, they don't get taxed on it. Maybe we could figure something like that out, but those are minor. I think that there was, at the end of the color law, there was a community, I think it was in Levittstown, where they did have one solution for repairing some of the housing problems, and that is that they went back and found what was the cost of the person who was denied buying that keeping their house, and they brought the value back to that someone could buy it, I believe is how it worked. So if I was denied buying a house over here that I'd wanted to buy, then we went all the way back there, and then I could buy it at that price, what it would have been worth had I not been discriminated against. And I think if the city, if we really keep this discussion going, we can come up with things like that, where the housing loans is a housing program, but maybe the reparations aspect of it goes to what if I'd been able to buy a house in that neighborhood at that price, would it be worth? I don't know if this is making any sense to me, but it makes sense to me because I've kind of figured out on some of these things, like what would it cost to buy a house over here if I were back in prior to the 1950s. So I think but my point being is that we need to get everyone at the table who's supposed to be at the table, and this somehow or other insist that the city council, we're not abandoning reparations, we just want a real reparations program. Thank you.
I apologize. Thank you, Mary. And thank you again, everyone, for coming in. Thank you to the candidates, audience members as well. We really appreciate this. And this was a wonderful conversation. It makes me so happy to see this because, you know, I was even educated more from the voices that I heard tonight. So thank you again. I dropped the link to sign up for public comment. Please do. And then if you have any other questions, concerns that you would like us to relay to any of the candidates, city council members, feel free to email us as well. You can find our email on our Facebook page as well. Thank you so much. And everybody have a good rest of your night and good rest of your weekend. Thank you.